When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. They're the home of the #1 checkout on the planet and the not-so-secret Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds and Skims use. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/start selling, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/start selling to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/start selling.
Droppens van regen op mijn kop. Ik via dek van bosse ziek, kleine paarden op. Geef mir geen zacht lint, die droppens van regen op.
Hey everyone, welcome to Kill Me Now with Judy Gold. I am your host, Judy Gold, and this week we have part 2 of my conversation with Gabe Dunn, which is fascinating and interesting, like all of my interviews. What a week it's been. I have to tell you. First of all, I had to pick up Elisa from her colonoscopy, and she was miserable for 2 days with the prep is really, you have to get it done, but the prep is ridiculous. Okay. So that was on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday last week, we went to see the most amazing, incredible, wonderful play of Prayer for the Prayer for the French Republic. And it's closing in March, but if you're in the New York area, it's amazing. The acting, the writing, the story, it's just incredible and so important. It's very today, you know what I mean? It really resonates on what's going on in the world today. Then I did the Sherry Show, which was a lot of fun. They're doing 50 over 50, which is women comedians who are over 50 competing. I mean, I hate the competition part, but I really loved it. I love that she's building up women over 50. You know, one of the comics who was performing, the second one who actually won, she won, they were both great. But the second one had a harder spot. But when she got there, the thing around the mic, that says Sherry, it kind of fell, and she had a mishap, and she made it funny. She said, "Oh no, I'll buy you a new one." But that to me was the defining moment, was that she had a harder spot and she got them. She ended up getting them, and she ended up dealing with something that happened in the moment. So that for us really, but they were both fantastic. So that's fun. And I love Sherry Shepherd. And then we went to Ben's games, and I have to tell you, the Bates game. So they played against Bates, and last year someone at the Bates game yelled something anti-Semitic to Ben, and he complained, and we were supposed to go to the Bates game, but Ben had, hurt himself. With his roommates were playing around with the knife, like ridiculous. He's like, I don't know how much I'm going to play. And of course he played the whole time. So I wish we had gone, but by the time he told us, it was too late to get to fucking Maine. So we watched on the stream, and the Bates fans were screaming, "Fuck Trinity." They yelled really disgusting things about, horrible. I didn't hear anything specifically homophobic or anti-Semitic, but when I asked, they said it was everything. It was everything. So Bates, you're disgusting. And Williams was really very awful, yelling shit at the team. And I just don't understand it. And Henry's like, that's college basketball. And I'm like, it's obnoxious and rude. And they were yelling stuff at Bates that you would get kicked out of an NBA game for. And no one did anything. So I might be Ruth Gold, my mother, and write a letter or an email, because it's not right. It happened last year and again this year, and it's disgusting. But they beat them. And then we went to Tufts and they won again. But the best part at Tufts, they also yell, but they yelled at Ben, "You have too many moms and your mom's not funny," which made me laugh so much. Like, he's shooting a foul shot and they're like, "Your mom's not funny." And I'm like, I didn't hear it, but Ben told me afterwards. And I thought, oh my God, that's hilarious. So I might name my tour. Someone suggested it on Instagram. My next tour will be "Your Mom's Not Funny." And then last year there was a call the ref made, and Elisa was like, "That wasn't, I don't know." She yelled something, and one of the dads, this is a Tufts dad, was like, "Oh, you girls, blah, blah," And I turned around, I said, "What did you say?" Like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Don't call us girls. And he said, "Who's your barber?" Because my hair was like out of control. And I said, "Who's my barber? Who's your therapist? What are you, 12? And he shut the hell up. What is with these parents acting like fucking 2-year-olds? The whole thing is, I just can't. We don't do that at Trinity. It's just awful, awful. So the worst offenders are Trinity. The worst offenders, Bates, Williams, and then I'll go a little. Tufts is a little, But they're these guys that can't play, and they just taunt people, and it's just so obnoxious. And it's, bullying. It's it just pushes my buttons because I was a bullied kid, and it's just like, shut the fuck up. Look at you. Anyway, so that's that. So we don't know what's happening as far as where we're going, if we're going to, Fort Wayne is with the NCAA tournament. We don't know anything. So it's like my career. But I'm so happy they rescued 2 hostages. God bless them. Unfortunately, we also lost some soldiers in the Israeli army, young people. It's just, the whole thing is just awful. Just the dying and the whole thing's horrible. But, we're going to survive. The anti-Semitism is through the fucking roof, and it's ridiculous. So that's that. I hope you enjoy, which you have to enjoy, part 2 of my conversation with Gabe Dunn, and just sit back and relax, and we'll talk to you after. There's a bunch of things I want to get to. I want to talk about your trans journey.
Sure.
As an LGBTQ plus person.
Sure.
I love the things that you've said about it, but just for people, I'm in the community.
Yeah.
I know trans people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lesbian. I was out when most people weren't out, but
yeah.
And I know you are very into, as I am, representation and not, and how important that is. But I think a lot of people, as I mentioned, 61, but I look 40. A lot of people, even in my community, don't get it.
Yeah.
And I talk about it, in my act, I try to explain. You're not changing your sexuality. You're changing your gender. Like, I know what it's like to be in the closet as a lesbian. I know what it's like to deal with the AIDS. I know what it's like to not be able to tell anyone because you could get fired, because you could not get an apartment, because whatever, all that stuff. I lived through, the AIDS, all that. Mm-hmm. But to be in the wrong body,
it's hard because I don't well, it's like kind of nuanced because a lot of people who do transition, their sexuality does change. Maybe
Yes.
because
A person.
they feel more comfortable to explore, or they feel like, okay, now I can sort of, because there's like maybe a misunderstanding where they think, oh, it must be that I'm a lesbian. And then they realize, no,
Right.
it just meant that, like, what's the path of least resistance, I guess, to be a lesbian, which is kind of funny. But no, I mean, look, I remember you being out when I was young. I remember, and not to say what your experience was, but I'm sure that was detrimental to your career. I'm sure that it
Absolutely.
was,
Yeah.
not, I think a lot about the people who were out when I was younger, like you, Leah Delaria, Scott Thompson, like all these people who kind of were out at this time. And I think the younger generation does not appreciate or know about the people that are around you and Scott and Leah's age or whatever, the other people. Like, I don't think they take into account that it was hostile and like not great. And I think sometimes there's this expectation of people to understand all the new stuff that's going on, or not even new, because obviously people were trans, or there
Yeah.
was always gender nonconforming. There's Lou Sullivan, there's Marsha P. Johnson, all these people who were always that way. But there's definitely more visibility from people who paved the way. And I think sometimes there's this unwillingness to understand that I can understand someone getting their hackles up by being like, okay, well, I did all this stuff and it was like hard for me. And then I think there's like a writing off of people who, I mean, I'm like, you can't even begin to understand the AIDS crisis and the way it was handled. And so I think there's kind of a flippant thing where, and that results in a reaction to that, which is, well, fuck you then.
Right.
I don't understand your
First of
gender
all,
stuff.
I
I don't
just
understand.
I want to say thank you.
Oh, of course.
Because I'm not one, who's like, oh, I paved the way. I'm not that person. I do think there is this willful ignorance about
Yeah.
our history. And
Yeah.
also I see in a lot of young, gay and lesbian and bi, not trans,
Right.
people, that there's this sense of entitlement. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
You have no idea
I know.
what it was like. And it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
And, and that's where I'm like, hey, you're on the wrong side. Do your due diligence. Learn your history.
mean-
Learn how we got to this place.
I think that there's like, say what you want about Ellen DeGeneres, but like that was crazy. And also like
Right.
Laura Dern almost lost her career for being in that episode. Like
Yeah.
there's no, like we were talking about this with someone yesterday, the concept of being out in high school. And I was like, I often refer to it as pre-Glee. It was a pre-Glee era where people
Yeah.
were not out in high school. Some people were. Some people definitely were. One of my exes was. My boyfriend now was out in high school. But like, to me, that was unthinkable. And so like, I do think that there's a butting of heads, particularly with people that are trans and gender nonconforming, with LGB older people. And
Right.
and so for me, it's like, okay, there's a lot of
Well,
nuance.
yeah, but-
like you're not like,
Yeah,
I don't think
it
I was,
comes from both directions. Yeah.
yeah. And I think I don't think I was born in the wrong body. I think also gender and sexuality are intrinsically linked sometimes. I think sometimes for trans people, we are so concerned with coming off perfect. Like, well, gender and sexuality are very different. And also like, this is my clear narrative. I was born in the wrong body, and I knew when I was very young, and this is like, I'm never having doubts, and I'm very sure. And like, because if you say you have doubts, they're going to take your healthcare away. If you say anything less than the perfect trans narrative, they're not going to let you transition, and they're going to make laws against you. So there is this push to be like, well, I'm always very sure. And which I relate back to the perfection that queer people, that LGB people needed to have in order to gain marriage. Because
Right.
you needed to act like I'm not slutty. I don't have AIDS. I'm very
Right.
perfect. I just want to be with one person for the rest of my life. All we want is
Oh
to be
my
just
God.
like the Christian normative people. Like, how do
Yeah.
you
You
think
know
we
what's,
got?
I love you saying that because, you know, when I came out as a gay parent and I talked about what it was like, you know,
Mhm,
having kids and all the shit people said, you know, I've said this before. I came out because I had a child,
mhm.
but it was precisely because of him that it made it easier for me because it was a way to get in where people could
Oh,
relate. And
relate
so
to.
that's
Oh, she just wants to have a child just like me.
right,
There's
right.
an
And
element of queerness that's like, we're just like you. We're just like you. Like, see, I'm trans
that's
and
why
I'm just
Pete
like you. I want
Buttigieg
to be
and
a boy.
Chase, yeah, Pete Buttigieg and Chase didn't annoy me with that. Like, we're just, you know, they're like, you know, we're just making the eggs and trying to get the kids off to school. I mean, I don't know why I'm
Mhm,
talking in a Southern accent, but I feel like saying I did that 30 years ago. I had
mhm,
that narrative 30 years ago to get in, you know, and let you know we exist. Our families are intact, are, you know, but
mhm.
I love what you're saying. You went from bisexual, you identified as bisexual first,
Yeah.
correct?
Mhm.
And when did you realize I'm bisexual?
Oh my God. I don't know. I was like 12.
Yeah, right. It's
I saw,
right when you go through puberty.
yeah, well, I saw the play Rent
Hmm.
and I was like, I want to be Maureen so bad. And it's kind of funny because I really related to Mark. I loved Anthony
Yeah,
Rapp as Mark. I
Mark
loved
Cohen.
that character. I was like, I'm
Yeah,
Mark. When we would dress up with our friends as the characters, I was always Mark. I wanted to be Mark. But then when it came to like the Mark and Joanne both being obsessed with Maureen, I was like, well, I got to be Maureen. I love it. And also she was like kind of fun and self-centered and like I used to do this bit when I did stand up where I was like the hard truth is when you think that you're a Liz Lemon but it turns out you're a Jenna Maroney. Like I would
right,
always be like, "Oh, you think you're Liz, but you're actually like
right.
this kind of flighty name droppy dum dum."
Yeah.
But I saw that and I loved her and I loved Adina Menzel. Oh my God, I loved
Oh,
her. I was obsessed with her.
yeah.
And like, so I would have these things. I was like to my parents, I was like, how did you not know? I had a full page poster of Lindsay Lohan in a bikini. The picture of her where she's got her hair, she's like, I'm sure the gays know. It's like a very
Right,
iconic photo of her. And I was like, I had that up in my room. And they were like,
right.
yeah, when we would ask, you would say she's a really good actress. Is she? Um, but so ridiculous. But they were like, but you
Oh
also had
God.
posters of guys, and I was like, yeah, like Seth Meyers. Like, are you kidding? But anyway, so so yeah, I mean, I would identify with these guys who were a little bit like effeminate, and so I wanted to be Maureen. But I looked back. It's kind of funny. So that's where I learned the word bisexual was in Rent. But I looked back at a friend of mine found these letters that I had written her in middle school. She was at summer camp and I was at camp and I was sending her letters. And she was like, oh my God. And she sent them to me and I was legitimate, like they were funny, but I was also legitimately gagged because I thought I was so closeted. And also, I thought there were
Right.
no gender giveaways. There was no gender anything. And I sound so fucking gay in these. I can't believe I was like, oh, I'm so closeted. No, I like literally write about having a crush on Emma Watson. Don't ever consider that I'm like, LOL, what a joke. Or like, there's one part that I was genuinely like so taken aback by where I'm talking about not liking someone. And I was like, I want to tell him to I want to have a cock just so I could tell him to suck my cock. What the fuck? What?
You identify as bi.
Yeah.
Um, your parent, I love when you say, "How did you not know?" Like that's the same. I'm the same. I was the same way. Like, hello, but you know, it's funny because my brother, who I wasn't that close with growing up, but now, you know, once your parents are dead, then
Hmm.
you know. And my sister was shocked. And I'm like, and I mean, I had boys' names. I was like, call me Ringo, call me Robert.
Yes.
I was like, had my hair really short. I mean, I wanted, whatever. I
but
never
it manifested
wanted to.
for people as me being boy crazy. Because I was like obsessed with Michael J. Fox, which when I found out Back to the Future was an old movie and he was a grown-up, devastating. But I would say, oh, well, you guys should call me Michael J. Fox because I love him. But like people would just be like, oh, Gabe's boy crazy.
Right.
And there wasn't really any knowledge of gender. So they'd be like, oh, Gabe just wants us to call Michael J. Fox because he loves Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. I have to say that, this generation, your generation, has helped me identify that I'm non-binary. I didn't have the, like people are always like the words. And it's like, oh, right. I have always been non-binary. I'm not, when I see a bunch of girls.
Yeah.
I have nothing in common, like, in their skirts and their, like,
it's all
not
like
even
gender
close.
Performance being tied to sexuality, which there are butch women who are like, it's not like it's how you feel, but like gender and gender presentation are sort of divorced from each other. And also it's interesting because one of the big moments for me of feeling like something gendery was going on was similar, where we were like at a restaurant, a bunch of us, and the waiter came over and he was like, what can I get you ladies? And I was like, who the fuck is he talking to? Ladies?
Right.
What ladies?
Yeah.
And
it's it's a him, of course. Yeah.
I had a joke. I used to do a joke where I was like, whenever people are like, oh, you used to be a lady, like and I'm like, no, I was a woman. I was never a lady.
Yeah. I was never a lady either.
Yeah.
I was a cunt. This week's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Now, I am a huge advocate for therapy. I talk therapy. I like physical therapy too, but I'm talking about talk therapy. I've been in therapy since I'm 18 years old. There is nothing better. Nothing better. And it is a stressful time. We just had an election. It's the holidays, and we're going to have to spend family time or not spend family time. It's a decision you might make in therapy, because therapy is really the best way, the only way to process your feelings, anxiety, depression, everything. I've been doing it for over 40 years. I know what I'm talking about. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, if you thought about it for years and just didn't do it, please give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient. It's flexible. It's suited to your schedule. You go to betterhelp.com/JudyGold. You fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch your therapist at any time for no additional charge. I've done that multiple times in my life, switch therapists. It works. It works. And I know a lot of people who have used BetterHelp, and they love it. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/JudyGold today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/JudyGold. You're welcome. So when did you know I need to transition? Can you just talk a little bit about that journey of, because when you are in our community, there are a lot of, okay.
It was like little moments. It was all these little moments, and then like looking back too, like wanting to be called, Michael J. Fox, and being obsessed with Niles from Frasier. Every guy I was obsessed with was effeminate. Lance from, I loved David Hyde Pierce. I loved him. But like thinking back, it's like you wanted to be him.
A nerd. I love it.
I wanted to be him because he was so in love with Daphne, and I thought that was so cool to be like an effeminate guy with a girlfriend. What?
Yeah.
And like, and so all of these things, and I think I didn't know about transness. So I was like, well, I'm queer in some way, so it's got to be bisexual. But then I still am bisexual. But it was very small. And also it was things that I was like, I couldn't possibly. Like I was like, well, I couldn't possibly cut my hair. And then you do it and you're like, okay, I couldn't possibly change my name. That would be so crazy. That would be so annoying to people. Then it was easy. I couldn't possibly change my pronouns. That would be so annoying to people. A lot of it was not wanting to inconvenience others.
Right.
And
There's your mother.
yeah. And also, like, I just was like, well, it would be crazy. Like, every step of the way, I would take months being like, that would be so nuts if I did that. And then I would pull the trigger and I'd be like, that was actually fine. And like, now it's so normal.
When you pulled the trigger on these steps, were you like relieved per step? Like, right.
Yeah, it was so, and I take it for granted now because it's so normalized, and I try really hard not to. Like, I try to think, like, I've said, like, even if I went back to being a woman, I'm so glad I don't have tits. Can you imagine? So cumbersome, so annoying.
Yeah.
And
I have them.
It's funny because my aunt was like, I wish I had top surgery. And I was like, you can get it. It doesn't matter. But cis people can get that if they want. But it just was like, and then I put a shirt on and I'm like, oh yeah, remember I used to have boobs? That's so weird. But like at the time I was like, I couldn't possibly. Or like when I hear there's like a TV character with my old name and people will be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like if that comes on or something. And I'll be like, I don't even register it as my name.
Right.
Like it doesn't even ping for me as somebody's talking to me.
Right.
So like, it's just so funny. Like so I try really hard to like take stock of what's become normalized and not take it for granted and be like, all these things that I thought were impossible, or like I look back on old pictures of myself, or like we reposted an old episode of the podcast and all the fans were like, for the holidays, all the fans were like, who the fuck is that talking? And then even my co-host, we got like an episode back and my co-host was listening back to it and she wrote back to the editor, who is this? And
that's
the editor
crazy.
was like, that's Gabe. And my co-host was like, what? Like
wow.
In the ads, we had to like redo the ads because it doesn't sound like me.
Right.
And
what is it when there is stuff on the internet.
I know.
Before Gabe.
I know.
What is
more than not?
Yeah. Now, what does that feel like when I don't know if you watch it or
sometimes.
Yeah. When you look at that other person, what does it feel like?
I mean, I think I'm like, she existed. She seemed like she was having a good time. Like, I do think it was a lot of, because I was a very like peacocky woman. I always had bright hair colors, bright makeup, little dresses. Like, I remember I was like, who was she? I went into BuzzFeed like to work in an office that with these like red stripper heels that I had bought on Melrose that I thought were like appropriate for work. Like a lot of my, what I dressed like as a woman, a lot of it was a little bit of a come at me, bro. Like I'd be like, what are you going to say? You going to tell me?
Because you wanted that. You wanted that interaction where you could say, no, I'm not who you think I am. Yeah.
It was drag. I mean, I was in drag. Like, one of the big clues was with my ex, I would say, whenever I would like shave my legs, I'd be like, ooh, a woman. Have you ever seen a woman? She's a woman. Or I would like get all dolled up in my like little drag thing. And I'd be like, wow, look at this woman. Like, ooh, one time my ex was like, you literally got dressed up and then said, I'm giving you the lady experience. And he was like, what? Like, women get dressed and they don't think, ooh, look at this costume I've put on.
Right. Which is, I've heard you say Halloween is your favorite holiday. And I think that for a lot of trans people, Halloween is their favorite. Because when they were kids, they could finally, for one day.
Yeah.
You talked about, I heard you talk about being bi and being trans, which is so interesting because for the first time in your life, you're actually dating gay men.
Yeah, on the apps.
Or right. And also, I thought it was so interesting when I heard you say, when you're trans and you're with someone and they don't know you're trans when you're,
Talking to them, yeah.
yes. And then you go home with them and they freak out and they hate you, which will happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would never, it's harder for a trans guy to do that, although you can get
Right.
bottom surgery. I would never not tell someone. I also don't pass. That's the other thing. But like people I know who do pass.
You talked about passing versus not passing. You said you're jealous of people who can pass, but they have their own kind of hell as well.
Yeah, where like, it's interesting. My boyfriend is also trans and he passes. And he also had small enough.
Is he Jewish?
No.
Fuck. Come on, Gabe.
He didn't even know enough about Jewish people to know the stereotypes. He was like, he's from a small town in the state of Washington. And he was like,
oh God.
When I'll be like, well, they say Jews talk a lot. And he was like, do they? Like, he doesn't even have any idea. Oh my God, Judy, the funniest thing happened. I was talking about anti-Semitism and I was like, yeah, they think that Jews all own really expensive apartments in Manhattan. Can you believe that? And he was like, oh, is it because you own apartments in Brooklyn? And I was like, what? And he was like, that's where you guys are, right? In Brooklyn? And I was like,
oh my
oh
God.
no.
That's amazing. I'm dealing a lot with the anti-Semitism. I mean, you have to deal with the anti-Semitism and the transphobia.
Yeah. But I was going to say, so he passes. He passes.
Yeah, he passed.
And so his thing is like, well, I'm like, they won't even talk to me because they know I'm trans. And he's like, well, imagine you're talking to someone and vibing, you mention you're trans, and then they stop talking to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, that does seem bad as well.
Right. It's a complete rejection. It's like, and it's so, what's interesting about that is those people are completely cutting themselves off. If you are relating to someone and sparks are flying and then you're like, that is that other person's huge fucking problem. Right. That you can't deal with that part of yourself. Thoughts on, I don't know if I should even bring this up.
What, the anti-Semitism going on right now?
And also the Queers for Palestine. And the anti-Semitism and this, it's so hard, I find, to be nuanced in this argument, or not argument, to say, look, I'm a Jew. I don't want anything bad to happen to innocent people on either side of this situation. I do want Hamas obliterated.
I will say one thing that has been interesting, and I obviously I don't want Palestine to be blanket rocket bombed. I think that's horrendous. Right. But it is horrible. Interesting. Yeah. I will say that one thing that is interesting is that as a Jew, I grew up hearing about Hamas. I grew up hearing about Hamas. This is not new to me. I've seen these problems go back and forth constantly. I lost a friend in high school to a suicide bombing. I heard about suicide bombings. Yeah, it was crazy. It's like it was a big one. It was like on the news and stuff because an American was killed. So it was like huge. It was like the Israeli embassy and the diplomats, and it was like this huge thing that this American had been killed in a suicide bombing. And it was like really jarring at my school, and it like really defined a lot. I had a lot of people die at my high school, and it was a very small school. But
I'm sorry.
So he passed away very violently. And it was awful, and it like blanketed my high school time. It was like a big moment, and so it's interesting to talk to people who kind of found out about this in October,
right? And are now experts. Also.
Yeah, it is, and like I get it, but I get it, and I know that it's all horrible, but I don't. It feels a little disorienting. Like, I get that there's no nuance to, like, a genocide, and I, like, totally understand that. But it is slightly disorienting to speak to people who are like, can you believe this? And I'm like, yeah, I can.
Right.
It, in fact, has been going on since I was I remember hearing about this in the 3rd grade. Like,
Right.
this is 30 years or more
Yeah.
of me hearing about Hamas did this, then Israel did this back, then Hamas did this, then Israel did this back.
Right.
Like, this is not new. So it's sort of
Right.
interesting that it's become the cause du jour when there are other genocides going on. And I'm sure people like everyone was super into Darfur and
what
then
about
they forgot
Syria?
about it.
Yeah,
Everybody,
and they don't. I do believe it is, and I do believe a lot of this is anti-Semitism. And like I'm a generation before you. My father served in World War II, so I've been hearing, it's the anti-Semitism that really fucking drives me up a fucking wall.
I think some people are very genuine, and I think some people are like, now's our time. And I also think that I grew up around a lot of Zionism for better, for probably for worse in terms of my ability to parse through this stuff. And, they get you at a certain way. Like my grandparents were in the Holocaust. We lost like almost everyone. It's kind of a weird thing where I was at like a wedding. I was at a wedding and the mother of the groom is a nutcase. And she was like, she kind of tries to get you in certain ways. So she was like, oh, can you believe, like, I'm sorry, our side is so small. All of my relatives died. She's not Jewish. And I said, oh, yeah, if I got married, my side would be really small, too, due to the Holocaust. Because I can go toe to toe. You want to be weird? I'll be weird right back.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a thing that people don't think about. So, I mean, I have a different experience, right? I speak Hebrew. I'm in a WhatsApp group with a lot of people who are in Israel. I have had a person I know pass away in a suicide. I think there is a difference in Judaism. I think there are Jews who I was sort of figuring out in the last few months are mostly Seinfeld Jews. They're Jews who I don't know how to explain it, but and I don't mean Seinfeld the man. I mean Seinfeld the show. Like, they're Jews who are like,
they never talk about, they never mentioned they were Jewish on that show, and yet they were so Jewish.
Right. Or they're Jewish now, and they're like, well, I'm Jewish, so my opinion holds this weight, which it absolutely does. And I think it's great for Jewish people to be like, please do not genocide. But it also is interesting because I feel, again, a little disoriented because I think people speak to me as though I am just like a Hollywood Jew, and they don't realize, like, when I talk to a lot of people my age, they're like, well, we're all atheists. And I'm like, no. And they're like, what? And I was like, I go to synagogue. I speak the language. This was like in October was when a lot of people in my life almost realized I was Jewish.
Right.
And not Jewish in a way that was like Seinfeld Jew, but
Seinfeldy, yeah.
They were like, not
I'm
religious,
the same way.
But they're like, you're Jewish. You know people in Israel, and you talk to people there, and like, again, like that doesn't make me a Zionist in any way, but it's a connection to the situation that is I found to be different than my peers. And I agree with them.
I get it.
I absolutely agree with them, but I'm coming at it from a place that is a little bit more entrenched than I found my peers to be.
You have facts and nuance, and I
might be wrong. Also, there's a thing where like I might be just totally. I'm not even. I fully stand with them, and I fully understand, and I get it. But what has and I'm not saying this has colored my opinion in any way, but it is jarring for people to suddenly be like, "Oh, you're like Jewish," and I'm like, "Yes,
yeah, right, yeah," and that's where the anti-Semitism. Because I know this may upset you. I am a Zionist. I believe Israel has a right to exist, and they have a right to defend themselves. Yeah.
Okay.
But I also think the Palestinians deserve their own place. And I, have always been a two-state solution. It's a nuanced thing because I don't want anything bad happening to them. I mean, it's just, I think that
I'm very anti-military. Like, I'm not being like,
yeah.
I'm not like in any situation. I'm not like, thank God the U.S. Army went into Iraq. Like, I'm not.
Right.
I think that there should not be carpet bombing. I think that we've got too many weapons. And I just was like
I
listening to
agree.
this 6-part podcast about Henry Kissinger,
Right.
and like, there's too many weapons. There's too much defense funding. There's too like, I don't even want the U.S. defending themselves in that way. Like, I don't want.
Yeah.
I think that the military spending is what has caused all of these problems, and Israel has become extremely like militaristic with like overuse of weapons, overuse of bombing, and so like I don't want any country doing that. We all saw Oppenheimer, but yeah, I don't want like any country doing that.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, I don't want anybody doing. I don't want anybody doing any of that.
I agree.
So
I'm with you on that.
So I've always been very like anti-war, anti-military. Although then it's even harder because I understand why people join the military in the US, because we don't have economic things in place and we don't make it easy for them to have any other options, which I feel is on purpose. My sister-in-law joined the Navy because she wanted to be a doctor and she didn't know how to pay for that. Like it's all connected to poverty and to like brainwashing and economic
inequality. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all, I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's all tied together. And I think that leads to genocides in a lot of places. And, and so I don't,
just, for me,
I don't want there to be a genocide, but I also think logistically, where is everyone going to go? But I'm not a geopolitical expert, but it's also interesting who, I don't know. I feel like I have to unpack some stuff, but I also feel closer. Like the day that it happened, my WhatsApp group was going nuts looking for people that I went to school with. That is a different experience.
Yep.
Than the Seinfeld Jews are having.
Yes.
That's not to say it's good or bad.
I love that. I'm using that.
Experience.
Can I steal that?
Yeah.
Can I steal Seinfeld Jews?
Yeah. It's just a different experience because I think it's very easy for someone who has no connection to the place to say, well, yeah, get rid of it. But I think it's harder. And maybe I am brainwashed, you know? Maybe losing someone in a suicide bombing has colored everything for me. I don't know. But it's different. Of
course it has.
It feels different.
It can't not. Like I was just there on an LGBTQ plus mission with the Wider Bridge. And I was there in June. Yeah. And, you know, we marched in the Jerusalem parade and, you know, whatever. But I was reaching out to my friends there. Right. You know, we are all, as Jews, even the Seinfeld Jews, you're 1 degree of separation away from someone living, you know.
I just think, yes, but it is interesting because I think there is a cultural, I think there's a lot of cringy stuff that people are doing. The pro-Israel people are really, sometimes I see stuff and I'm like, this is not helpful. Please stop.
Right.
This is going to cause anti-Semitism actually, because you're equating it so much with anti-Zionism that now we're going to have problems. But I also think it's hard because I'll see, I agree with their point and I'll see pro-Palestinian people post something and I'll be like, yes, I agree with.
But you can't. Here's the problem.
I agree with you, but you don't. But there's, this is an example, is they were citing a biblical thing that I grew up learning the Torah. So I know the context for that phrase. And they'll be like, oh my God, can you believe this phrase? Which I understand is bad. And I understand proves their point. And I understand is their point that they're making is important and needed, and it's an emergency because people are being genocided. But I know from having studied Torah for 20 years that that is actually being taken out of context, but I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or if that's just causing more, then it makes it look like I'm a Zionist. Like, I don't know. Like a friend of mine posted something that was like, oh, Gal Gadot changed her name to be more Israeli. That makes her a colonizer or whatever. And I know that, or like, there was a thing that was like, this was what it was. It was like Benjamin Netanyahu's real name is this. So he's not even Jew, like it's not a Jewish name. And I know that that's not true, that they're confusing it with his grandfather.
Right.
But is it like, but then if I message that person and say that's not true, it's not that I'm Zionist. It's not that I'm
It's
I'm
just
not
that you're trying
pro-Palestine.
to. Right.
It's that I'm trying to be like, you're saying the wrong thing and your message is getting fucked up. But like,
Here's the thing with you know what I feel like because I've tried to explain to other people and they just come back at me like, yeah. And it's like, you don't want to know. Like the term pro-Palestine, like I'm pro-Palestinian. I'm anti-Hamas. So I hate that,
I just I want the people who are fighting against genocide to have all of the correct information. But I also am like, okay, so is it better for them to fire this off as an emergency to stop people being carpet bombed? Or is it better for them to have the right information? And is it worth it for me to say something? And I
think the right information. I mean, you're a journalist. That's what I also wanted to say.
But it feels like fighting semantics, but it also is a little bit difficult for me to see stuff that I know is slightly off. But I also know that people don't know it's slightly off because they don't have the education that I have. So is it even worth? Like, I don't know. We're not going to solve it here.
I know. I totally. Okay, I'm getting like we have to wrap it up. But I know
we have to wrap up. Yeah.
I know, but I love you. I love you.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Next time we talk, I really want to get your thoughts on the media and how they fucked up this country. And the world.
I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Oh God. Okay. So here's the last two questions that I ask all my podcast guests.
Okay.
All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Number one, I know you're bipolar. You're bi and you're bi. You're bipolar, you're bisexual.
And bilingual.
What do you do? And bilingual.
Yeah.
Woo!
I know, all of them.
What do you do for your mental health? We're a very pro mental health podcast. What do you do for your mental health? Besides, I mean, I'm on drugs.
Yeah. Well, right now I get fixated on stuff. Right now I play 2 games on the internet called Cinema Grids and Movie Grids. Can't recommend them enough. And it's just like making connections, like this actor was in this movie with this, or like trying to be like, what is a movie that, this director has done that is one word, like, so it just turns my brain off where I'm just I'm a movie, I'm a cinephile. So I'm just like, and then I'm upset if I can't get, like, if I'm like, how come I don't know what movie Amy Adams did, blah, blah, blah. So, that's where I can focus my anger.
Yeah. And then, the podcast is called Kill Me Now, although I really kind of want to change it because it's not the full breadth of what we do here. But the reason it's Kill Me Now is because I get annoyed at every fucking, I am my mother times 1,000, where I get so annoyed at shit. So what pisses you off more than anything that makes you so fucking crazy? And it could be anything. But what really makes you fucking mad?
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I have a list of people I hate. On my podcast, it's like a top 5 types of people I hate, and it changes all the time. But number 3 consistently is child vlogger, influencer, mommies that put their kids on the internet.
Oh, I love that.
That is consistently number 3. And then 1, 2, 4, and 5 changes. But 3 is always mommy vloggers,
such a good
family vloggers. No, fuck that.
I am 150%. Like when I go, well, we don't go on auditions anymore. We go on tape. But when I would go and I would see these mothers with their kids and they're like, go over it again. Go over it. And I was like, oh my, what the fuck are you doing?
Awful.
Gypsy Rose Lee. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah. I hate it.
I hate it too. It's bad parenting. Gabe, you are fucking phenomenal.
Oh,
you're so
thank
fucking smart. I really wanted to see you when I come to LA.
Okay.
Oh, look at how you go. Okay, yeah, I'll work that out. but you're just great, and your content, you're just putting out quality. I love you. You're great.
Thanks.
Where
I'm
can
stressed
people
out
find
all the time.
I know, same. Where can people find you?
Well, I don't know when this comes out, but I'm working on my debut feature film, and we're fundraising right now. So you can go to my Instagram at Gabe S. Dunn, and there's a Seed and Spark that you can please donate to. But also, either way, we're shooting in March. But I would love to have the money to do so.
Yeah, this will be on before then.
Well, we locked in the location and all the crew and all the actors, so it's happening whether I like it or not.
I'm so proud of you. That's so great.
Thanks. If anyone wants to invest in the movie, let me know.
Yeah, Gabe S. at Gabe S. Dunn.
Yeah.
Gabe Shane Dunn.
Gabe Shane.
Dunn. Gabe, thank you I can't thank you enough.
Oh, of course.
You're great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Gabe.
Of course.
Thank you so much for listening to part 2 of my interview with the amazing Gabe Dunn. Kill Me Now is produced by Laura Vogel, edited by Colin Schmaling, and marketed and whatevered and scheduled and everything by Brittany Jo Sowards Richmond. If you have not subscribed and left a review, please do so. Please. It really helps. It does help. What else do I have to tell you? I do have some gigs coming up, but I'm not sure they are 100%. So I'm not telling you what they are, but one could be in Minneapolis on the 21st, or in Bloomington, Minnesota. Yeah. So that's what's going on. What else do I have to say? I don't know. Nothing. I hope we get more hostages. I'm really sick of the Biden-Trump thing. I'll get into that in my rant next week. I don't know. I just hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. And I just want to thank you all so much for listening. And as we always say, so long. Oh, the Super Bowl. I never said anything about the Super Bowl. They won. Kansas City. It was fun. We watched it at the Comedy Cellar. I can't believe I just ended and then came back. No one's going to hear this unless they listen to the end. So thank you for listening to the end. So yeah, I forgot to talk about the Super Bowl, but who cares? And as we always say, so long.